Hi, everyone. Today is a great day to talk about how I got my Mexico temporary residency almost a year ago, back in 2024. I'm going to go over the exact steps that I took. There are 8 steps. Of course, I wrote them down on my note card so I won't get off track. And I'm going to also talk about the cost. Now, I am not going to go through forms so that we can just move on with the steps. Step number one is to find a consulate, a Mexico or Mexican consulate in your home country. Now, you can only apply for the visa that you get outside of Mexico when you're applying for temporary residency. Um, there are some exceptions, is what I'm trying to say. So, the one that's coming to mind is if you're applying for residency through family reunification, which means somebody close to you, your spouse or child, already has residency, then you can apply in the country. But if you're just starting off, it's just you don't have any ties to anybody else with residency or Mexican citizenship, then you have to apply in your home country. There did used to be a way where you had to apply in the country for temporary residency, but that was done away with in May. So you go to the Mexican consulate in your country or in whatever country you're in, and you start the application process there. All right. Step two is to schedule your appointment. Now, a part of step one that goes with step two is that you can, with little exception, go to any consulate in your country. So I'm from the United States, so I'll just specifically refer to the United States going forward. Excuse me. So there are a few consulates. I live in Texas. Well, I lived in Texas. So when I applied, so the Dallas consulate has a rule where you have to live within a certain mile radius of that consulate to go to it. And there is another consulate in a city called McAllen in very, very far south Texas. You have to be a Texas resident to apply at that one. These stipulations might apply at other Mexican consulates in the U.S., but those are the only two I know about since I was a Texas resident. So, but for the majority of the time, you can apply at any consulate, and people do that so that they can have the best chance of being approved because every single consulate has their own income requirements and their own rules and the way they work about things. They even have different consulates, even have different ways of setting up appointments. So it's these consulates are in the United States, but they don't run like American businesses or American institutions. They run like Mexican institutions, and they each have the autonomy to make their own rules and set their own schedules. So people learn which consulate would be favorable for them and go to that one. So on my personal journey, I lived in the Dallas area. So I wanted to go to the one in Dallas for the most convenience. Dallas is known for being very, very difficult with trying to get through and schedule an appointment. And I had that challenge with them. I went back and forth with them via email for about a week. And I finally just said, forget it. I will go to another consulate. I also emailed a consulate in Southern Texas for some time for just a back and forth. In that same week, I was back and forth with Dallas. I went with this one and just did not get good results. So I ended up going to Houston, which turned out to be such a blessing. It was great that I went through Houston, and I will tell you why. Houston's consulate. I guess I should give you some background. I'm just looking at my note again. I should give you guys a bit of background on the qualifications. So I'll just touch on them just a little. I qualified through a process called economic solvency. That's when you use either your monthly income or your retirement income to qualify. Every consulate has their own income requirement, minimum income threshold. So, in addition to that, most consulates require 12 months of income records, but some require 6 months of income records. So, Dallas requires 12 months. Houston only required 6 months, which was great for me because I was just at my 1 year mark on my job. So I had like 11 months, and I would have had to wait another month to apply to have 12 months worth of income that met the requirement. So being kind of forced to go to Houston was a huge blessing for me because I only had to have the 6 months and I didn't have to worry about somebody having mercy, for me to have 1 month short. All right. So step two, you schedule your appointment. Some offices you schedule them online. Some you schedule them via WhatsApp. Some you can call a phone number. Some, like the Dallas office, you have to email back and forth, and they get all of your requirements up front before they will even set you an appointment at the Dallas office, which is good for, many people go to these appointments and they get turned down. So, the Dallas situation is good because you won't waste your time and go and get turned down. Some people drive far. There's not a Mexican consulate in every city. So some people drive far and get turned down. I guess in the instance of the Dallas consulate, at least that won't happen because they won't even give you an appointment if you don't qualify. Now, when I went to the Houston consulate, I didn't have to send anything in advance. I just got the appointment and went. But I was very, very thorough in making sure that I had all of the documents that I needed. Okay, so I scheduled my appointment, and then you go to your appointment for an interview. Now, it's just like I've been to the Mexican or to the consulate here. It's not a consulate, to immigration. They call it INM. I forget what that stands for, but the immigration office here is the same way. You can have an appointment. So let's say I have a 9 o'clock appointment and I arrive at 8:45. Somebody who came at 8 with a 10:30 appointment is going to get seen first. So that's something to know. Plan to stay the whole day, of course, but it's kind of first come, first serve, even if you have an appointment. And I've seen this, here, and I've heard that that's the case in most consulates. So you go to your appointment, you check in. The check-in process is like there's an official person there, and you are not getting in without an appointment, usually. At some places, they let you come and make an appointment in person in the United States, but not all. So I got in, I had my appointment, I went, I sat down, and I waited. Now imagine there's everything going on there. There's not just residency, people for residency. There are Mexican citizens for, doing different things there. So it's a lot of, imagine the DMV where they have like A through J. So they're calling, A10 and J173. And they're doing this in Spanish usually. So you do have to pay close attention unless you are, at least decent in Spanish. Sometimes, so when I first got there, they had a television that was listing what number they called. Something happened with the television, it went off. And so at that point, you just have to listen and pay attention. But because they know there are foreigners there, especially there's one person assigned to call the foreigners who are applying for residency. So they will come out and call your name if you don't come. I saw that happen. So you go in for the interview and They just ask you questions and look through your paperwork. They ask you, like why you want to go. My answer was, I can't remember exactly what my answer was, but it was just, from my heart. I just want to explore the country and be able to stay long term, is what I said. A thing about the questions, you want to be as brief and to the point as possible. I've heard some people say that they went and they gave these very deep, I just want to get away from the United States because of the administration. I'm paraphrasing. Or I just want, whatever administration was in when they went. Or I just want to whatever. Be basic. This is an interview to get into a country. Be professional, be basic, and do not. You're likely going to be nervous because this is an interview for something you really want and something you really invested a lot of time into, preparing for, and that could shape your future. So you're gonna feel a little nervous. And I know some people talk a lot when they get nervous. Just make sure you take a deep breath and don't do that. So that was my answer, in general. And they look through your paperwork. Now they scrutinize the paperwork very carefully. So what happened in my instance was that I brought my offer letter. Now, if you've seen some of my previous videos, I was in corporate nursing. My job was online, remote. So the word remote, I was a nurse case manager. Remote nurse case manager, that was in my title. So there was no back and forth about, whether I could still earn income while I was out of the country. So I didn't get grilled about that. But what I did get questioned about is that, so I started the process in late July. I think the last one of the final Monday in July is July 2024 is when I started looking into what consulate I was going to go to and making my appointment and such. So that it was August. I don't remember the date, but it was a date in August whenever, y'all, I'm gonna get it, stop and get it, because I was gonna show you the my visa, and I'm gonna stop and get it. So I'll know the date when I look at it. Sometime in early August, I had started my job on August 28th, but my offer letter was from early August, maybe like August, a single digit date in August was my offer letter, and I started on August 28th. By the time I went to that appointment, my offer letter was a few days over 1 year old. So the agent picked up the phone and called her supervisor in the same building, I'm sure. And she asked her if the letter, my hire letter, was acceptable because it was over 1 year old. So they went back and forth about that very briefly, and her supervisor gave her the okay. So she proceeded, and we, went on. We actually had really good conversation to put you at ease. We had nice conversation. She asked me where I wanted to go, or what my favorite part of town was, and I had never been. And I was honest about that because, of course, they can tell if they want to, if you ever visited, and they probably know in advance. I don't know. I can imagine that they can tell if you've ever been to Mexico. So, of course, and there's no reason to lie about that. If you qualify, you'll get approved. They're not here to try to stop you. So I was just, to counter that, though, I named the towns that I wanted to go to, or that I knew people in or had heard things about. I was conversational on that level. And so we had great conversation about that and a few other things, life and finance and all of that. And so, yeah, that was that interview part was that. Now, I want to interject here and talk about the price. So this was 2024. The price increases every year based on minimum wage in Mexico. Minimum wage in Mexico usually increases about 12 to 20%, usually closer to 20% every year. So usually, now 2024 to 2025, it stayed about the same, which was unheard of, um, from my understanding. So last year it was 4,300, 4,000, 4,400. It was about $4,500. $4,434 is what it was, if I'm not mistaken. Very close to that. So between $4,400 and $4,500 per month for economic solvency. This is net income. I'm sorry. Yes, net income after taxes, not gross. So you have to meet this requirement. This has to be the payout, not what your employer pays you before taxes, not even what they pay you before they take out. So this is the amount that you receive after they take out your insurance, your 401k, whatever deductions are taken out of your paycheck. This amount has to be there after all of those deductions and show up as a deposit in your bank account. So net, not gross. Okay, and then so that's monthly. Now what I wrote down, and then again, like I said, most consulates require this amount to be deposited for the last 12 consecutive months. Some require it for the last 6 consecutive months. Okay, what I wrote down was for 2025, and I'll go through that actually last. I'll talk about money, more about pricing at the end. So that part got taken care of, and the interview process was over. And I was nervous because the people before me got denied. So, and they were upset. Oh, they weren't, making a fuss, but they were visibly very disappointed when they walked out. So I was nervous. So she was like, okay, you're approved. While we're sitting there, we're still conversing, and she finished the process and she was like, okay, go downstairs. You're going to go downstairs, she was telling me, and pay the fee, because you have to pay an application fee and it's non-refundable, whether you get approved or not. So while we were talking, she made an error. When she finished and she was looking over it, she realized she made an error, and she was like, oh my gosh, I can't remember what the error was, but she told me she made it, and she told me she would work on fixing it. She sent me down to pay the fee, and she, worked on it or whatever. The fee was $51 at that time. I went down to a booth, I paid my money, and I came back up with my receipt. And you have to show the receipt to get your passport back. So you give your passport because there's going to be a visa placed in it. It makes sense for me to get it now. And I'm sorry I didn't do this before. Excuse me. It's not far away. Okay, I'm back. All right, so I'm just going to show you guys what the visa looks like. So they take your passport and they put this visa inside. Up my confidential information. I guess this is good enough. All right, so they put a visa inside that looks like that on one of your passport pages. So I come back up, and I'm coming back up to get my passport with that in it. And usually once you're approved, because my appointment was in the morning, I would have just gotten my visa. Well, she couldn't correct whatever she had put in the system incorrectly. It had already gone through. And so my application was flagged. So I couldn't get my visa that day. Now, I had already told her that I came from Dallas, and she was like, Dallas, we get a lot of Dallas people. So I was supposed to have to wait to come back and pick up. She was like, it should be ready tomorrow, but I cannot say for sure. And I was like, oh, I need to go back home. So we made arrangements for me to have a proxy, which was my bestie who lives in Houston. To I think I stayed one more day and it still wasn't ready. So I went home. But before I left, I had arranged for someone else to pick it up. Now, I don't know if that was like she did me a solid or if that's an actual thing that can happen, or if that's part of the process, but she did allow it. So it was 3 days later before my visa was ready. And my bestie went and picked it up and she just gave it to me whenever we were going to see each other soon. So she just gave it to me then. Now, when you get this visa, after you get this visa, you have 90 days from the date on the visa to go to Mexico and exchange the visa for your temporary residency card. That process is called a canje, canje. So you have to complete your canje. You're going to hear all about this all the time. Canje, canje, canje. That is what that is. Canje translates to exchange. You're going to exchange this visa. So this visa is only valid for 90 days. That's it. If you don't make it to Mexico to do the exchange within the 90 days, you start over and have to apply all over again. Your visa expires. So that was in August, and I went for my canje in November. Now, that moves us along to step 4. So I went to get my canje, and you go to, of course, the immigration officer, INM, which I still can't remember what that stands for, but you go to the immigration office and you exchange the canje for your actual temporary residency card, which I'll show you guys that as well. All right, you go and they ask you, you sign in and they ask you questions. Now, let me say this because this is really important. Muy importante. You need an appointment also for most offices to go for your canje. There are some offices that don't require you to have an appointment, but very few. So you schedule this appointment online. You also will need, it's very important that you know exactly how to handle things no matter whether you fly in or, I don't know if it applies if you drive in. I think the process is a bit different if you drive. No, I think you still have to go and get something put into the system, but definitely if you fly. So whenever you're a tourist, you go through, of course, the tourist line, the non-citizen line. I can't think of the exact name of what I'm trying to think of, but you have to go through immigration when you arrive in a new country. So people without a visa for residency get a different stamp than the people who are coming for residency. It is imperative that you tell the immigration officer who checks you into the country that you are coming for a canje, because they have to put your date of arrival. They have to put information in the system that triggers a number that you need in order to get your residency card. If you just go through and don't say anything, or a lot of people have trouble with this, you can, in major cities, major ports in Mexico, you can use a machine to check into the country. If you use that machine, you don't get what's necessary in the system activated, because you're going to have to use some information from that activation when you go online and print your forms out for your appointment. So you can already have the appointment, but when you get to the appointment, if you don't have this certain paper, you're not going to be able to get your residency card. Okay, so I did that, and they make a specific notation on your visa. So if you guys can see, somebody wrote canje 30. So that was written there, and that was an indication that I went through the correct process. So you go to the INM office at your appointment, or sometimes you don't have an appointment. It's something that I skipped. There's a person called a facilitator. A facilitator is a person who is in Mexico. They are supposed to be very well versed with the process of getting residency, and they come with you. They do everything for you. They get your paperwork ready. They schedule your appointment. They actually are there in person with you, and they speak for you. You don't. They tell you. They either prepare you on what you should say, what your answer should be, but most of the time they say you just do not speak at all. Um, so you can have a facilitator, and facilitators are also they're great for that part, of course, especially if you're not accustomed or comfortable with speaking in Spanish. And I've always loved Spanish. I took Spanish in junior high and high school, and I moved to Texas when I was in my early 20s. So I got an opportunity to use it often. So what they also do is they have someone, they either do it themselves rarely, but they usually have someone on their team. This person goes and stands in line because, like I said, it's first come, first serve, even if you have an appointment. So they will hire someone who will go in the middle of the night, 3, 4 a.m., especially at the busier offices, and stand in line so that you can just, and then in the morning when you're awakened and fresh faced and all of that, you just go take the place of the person they hired to hold your spot in the line. And that way you're not waiting all day. So that's something that's very useful for facilitators. I did not use a facilitator because, again, I'm comfortable speaking Spanish, and I really do want to immerse. I love the the Mexican culture. The people are beautiful to me. I'm not afraid, and I had time. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it myself. So I didn't have a facilitator, but coincidentally, I sat by an amazing facilitator, and we had conversation because I had my hair out like Afro style. He was like, "You have the coolest hair I've ever seen." So we struck up conversation, and he came in handy later on. All right. So you go there, they ask you some questions, you sign in, you wait. Like, I went to an office that did not require an appointment. This INM office is and I intentionally did this because I just didn't want to go through all. I actually was not well versed at that point with making an appointment online. I was like, it's good enough for me to get through printing out all of the correct paperwork and getting myself there and all of that. So, and conversing and feeling comfortable. So, I went, and also I left a house sit in Boquete, Panama before that. And house sit, I just didn't want a chance having an appointment and something happened with the return of the host or with my travels or anything like that. So I had that ease and I was not, pressured. So I went to the office in Lake Chapala. Lake Chapala is in the state of Guadalajara. It's just probably about an hour and a half. I drove there. I rented a car and I drove there. I stayed in my favorite city in Mexico of all, which is called Tlaquepaque. And I drove from Tlaquepaque to Lake Chapala, and it took me about 45 minutes each way. So they do not require an appointment. Well, they didn't last year. They probably still don't. Beautiful, beautiful office to go to. It's a very small office. The people are so kind, and it's a very large expat community in that area. Um, that occupy Lake Chapala and their sister city called Ajijic, Ajijic. So they're accustomed to foreigners and American speaking people. Although they don't speak English, nobody on there was fully bilingual in English. Nobody on their staff, but they understand enough and they are kind to work with you. So there's no pressure. They're not out to get you. So I went and I waited for my name to be called after I signed in. They went through my paperwork and I made a mistake on my paperwork. I actually made two mistakes. Oh, okay. My mistake that I made was because I didn't have a facilitator. What I did was I used the hotel address. I was staying at an amazing bed and breakfast in Tlaquepaque. I used that address, which most people do when they're applying. They just use their hotel address as their address because they're not gonna like send you anything. So what the issue was is that for that address, which was closer to the city of Guadalajara, which is where the nearest I&M office is, that address has to go to the Guadalajara office in the city of Guadalajara. So they couldn't see me with that address. So they told me that, and you know how somebody insinuates that you can fix this if you had an address here, locally or in this area. So I left and I actually had gotten the phone number of the facilitator who I was seated by. He was there helping three unrelated people at once to get their residency. So I texted him because I had gotten his phone number. In case I had any questions, I texted him and I told him what happened. And he was like, he advised me on how to proceed, which was by using a local address. So but they don't print documents for you at the there's a big thing that people know and discuss often, which is that you will upset the people at the I&M office and at the consulate in Mexico, the Mexican consulate in the US, if you ask them to make your copies. You better go there with your own copies with like multiple. I did some in color, some in black and white because I didn't know what they preferred. I found out they prefer black and white. But so I had to leave and go downtown, which they call, what is the name of it? It's beautiful. And Lake Chapala is beautiful. It's on the lake. I can't remember the name of what they call the city centers in Mexico. But I went there and so I looked up a place that does printing. I parked, I walked a few blocks, and I refilled out the document on my phone and I just emailed it. When I got there, they gave me an email address to email it to. And they printed the document out, and I went back. By this time, it's like right after noon, right after 12, by the time I go do all of that and come back. Because I had to find parking. That was the Malacon is what they call it, I believe. MALEC, Malacon. I'm pretty sure that's the right word. So it was very crowded. A lot of people out and about. Of course, it's noon. People are coming to have lunch and just see the city and blah, blah, blah. So it took me a while to do this. It took me about an hour and a half to leave and come back. So I leave, I come back, it's a bit afternoon, I sign in again, and I wait for my name to be called. I probably wait about 30 minutes. So I get called, and I had made an error on my paperwork, which was that I put they were asking what town I was born in or what state I was born in, and I put something else. I misinterpreted what that said, and I put the wrong answer. Since they didn't catch it the first time before I left, they didn't make me leave again. They were kind enough to just correct it. I corrected it, and they printed it for me. So I get through all of that. They ask a few questions like my height and weight. They ask my income to re-verify. They asked me something else, but I don't remember. It was just something statistical. I mean, or something dealing with my biometrics. Like maybe it was my parents' last name or something. I don't know. But it was a very basic question, not a trick question, just a fact about me. And after that, I was done. They were very friendly, conversational. They even complimented me on they asked, what is your level in Spanish speaking? And I said beginner, and they laughed and they were like, no, you're not a beginner. So very friendly. And they were like, okay, you're approved. However, by this time, it was so late. It was close to 3 and they closed, I think, at 3:45 or 4. So they told me I have to come back because after that they print your card and give it to you. So that, and they have to enter all of their paperwork, get it, all of that information from the paperwork, get it signed by the, supervisor or whatever. So that part takes time. So they told me to come back the next day, but they told me to come at 3:30, between 3:30 and 3:45, because I didn't have to wait or anything. All I had to do was sign and get my card, my residency card. So, excuse me. So I did leave, and of course, and I came back the next day and I just picked up my residency card. And here that's my driver's license. I'm about to show y'all my driver's license. Here it is. So you get this card, and mine, of course, is for temporary residency. So there you have it. Okay, so I think that's all of the steps. I picked it up, and once you have that, you don't need the visa anymore. So the visa, of course, since I have it here, it's always going to remain in your passport, and it takes up a whole page. So one of the requirements is to have a certain number of pages left in your passport. And also so I think it's a requirement that your passport has at least 6 months left before it expires when you do this, because you don't want to get this canje and then go get another passport. Have to go get another passport because it's inside your passport. So it's a requirement. Maybe the requirement is only 3 months since you have 3 months to go. I don't know. Okay. And let me get to, so that was my experience. Not bad at all, not traumatic, people feel so attacked. So I guess this is just my summarizing points, including the pay. People feel so attacked when they get turned down at the consulate or questioned, or they feel like the people whom I've heard and seen in the forums that I'm in and such, like they just don't want to give it to you. They don't not want to give you, residency, but they have rules to follow. And I think because it's Mexico, and Mexico has a stigma of being, I'm just going to come out and say it the best way I can, like looked down on and less than, which is crazy to me, because of how beautiful the country is, the resources, the people, all of those things. But I don't know, people just feel like, I've seen some people adopt the attitude that just because they show up to apply, even if they don't have all of their things in order, their paperwork in order and the requirements met, that somebody is against them if they're not just handed the residency easily. They are sweet people. They want you to succeed, but they are at work. They have to comply or get fired. So yeah. All right. For pricing, I paid $51 at the consulate in Houston, the Mexican consulate in Houston. And I looked on my bank statement for the price that I paid to exchange the canje for my temporary residency card. I paid $267.08 USD. $267.08. Now, I left out something. When you exchange your canje for the residency card, you get it for 1 year. After that 1 year, you have to be in Mexico and you renew it for up to an additional 3 years. So you can renew it for 1, 2, or 3 years because you remain a temporary resident for 4 years. After 4 years, you have to either convert to a permanent resident or just give up your residency, your temporary residency, and just go back to being, a tourist. All right, so that was the fee for 1 year in 2024. Now, I wrote down the prices for this year. So I told you guys that I don't know if I said this correctly, but now I'm 100% sure. Last year, the requirement in Houston, at the Houston consulate for monthly net income was $4,394. You had to make above that, or at least that. This year in 2025, the average is $4,200. I think it decreased a bit by about $100 at most consulates, which has not happened I've never heard anybody say that it ever happened. It usually increases by 20% every year. So the average, again, each consulate sets their own numbers. Some are lower, some are higher. I looked through a table that has the requirements for each consulate in the United States. The average was $3,600 to $4,400. So I said 42, but you can find some places where it's around 36, 37, and you can find some places where it's as high as 4,400. A general rule that I've observed is that if the consulate is in a place with a lower, what do you call it? Like the amount people make every month, standard of cost of living, then their requirements are going to be a bit lower compared to the national average, cost of living compared to the national average, because they are there to serve the people in their area, even though they allow folks from everywhere, for the most part, to come. So you can find the consulate that works for you and your income requirements. Again, like I was saying, your income requirement and your time. So let's say you only met the income requirement for the last 8 months, not the last 12 months, and you want to go now. Then you would find a consulate that only requires 6 months of income, because it's either going to be 6 or 12 months. Now, what I didn't mention, because I met economic solvency by monthly income, you can also apply based on your savings account. So same thing, 6 months to 12 months, 6 months or 12 months of proof. But it is this year, 2025, the average is $70,000 in savings. So this is any account that you have that has maintained this balance for the previous 6 months or 12 months. So if you have your 401k, your IRA, if you just have a savings account, that you keep, maybe that's your emergency fund. Maybe you need over $70,000 for your emergency fund, it's for an annual savings. So $70,000 is the average range now. I saw between 67,000 and 74,000 when I looked at the requirements for each state's consulate right now in 2025. So if you have an account that has maintained that balance and never has gone under for the 6 or 12 months prior, you can use that and you won't have to qualify by monthly income. So you can use monthly income or savings. Now, a thing to remember, and I skimmed each consulate's requirements, y'all. So there could be some outliers. What I saw was a minimum of around 36 to 3,700 and a maximum of 4,400. I might have missed something that was a little bit lower or a little bit higher. So, but that range is pretty close. Also, a note to you guys is that if you are thinking about doing this, which I'm sure you are since you watched this whole video, and I applaud you and I welcome you, and it is one of the best things that I've done. And again, I'll link the video to let you know why I chose Mexico, over other places. But the income requirement, as I mentioned, for economic solvency, it changes every year, and usually it goes up by about 20%. To put that in perspective, I went back and found the 2022 income requirement, which that was just 3 years ago. 3 years ago is not a long time. So right now, the average per month is $4,200, as I mentioned. In 2022, the range was 2,400 to 2,700. So we'll call it 2,500. So it went from 2,500 to now 4,200, only 3 years later. And then for if you wanted to meet the requirement with savings, in 2022 it was $45,000 average. Now it's $70,000. So these amounts have almost doubled in the sense of, or in the example for savings, and $2,000 more for monthly. So I say that to say, if you want to apply for Mexican residency, do it now before 2026 happens, because there is a law that's being considered. It could either decrease substantially because they will calculate based on another set of numbers, or they'll keep the same rules. And if they keep the same rules, especially because it decreased a bit, which is kind of unheard of, between 2024 and 2025, it will likely increase for close to the 20% in 2026. So why gamble? Especially if you're just on the cusp of qualification, then you want to go ahead and do it. And remember, now it can be very challenging to get an appointment at a consulate, and even to know which one to go to that has openings. And I offer a service to help with that if you run into any issues. So reach out if you run into that issue. But it is October 22nd right now. So as long as you get approved at the United States consulate or the consulate in whatever country you're in by December 31st, get the first part done in order to qualify based on the current income requirements. You don't have to complete the entire process, because they don't ask you for it. She asked me what my income was during my interview here in Mexico, because right now I'm in Mexico on a house sit. And I'm here to renew mine, because the 1 year you get, and then you renew again for between 1 and 3 years. So since I'm almost at my 1 year anniversary, I came to do the renewal for another 3 years. So she did ask me my income, which is customary, but I didn't have to prove it. I didn't have to show any documents. So there you have it. Go ahead and do it. Just get it out of the way if it's something that you're thinking about doing. That was my experience in 50 minutes. Wow. So very informative, very step by step. Nothing to be scared of. And if you don't speak, basic Spanish, they're not going to try to, trick you and say complicated words and such. They will try to help you. But if you don't want to even deal with that, again, you can hire a facilitator. I will put the facilitator's information on my Met in the description. But again, he only works at Lake Chapala. He might do Guadalajara also. Guadalajara City, both are in the state of Guadalajara. I'm not sure, but I will put, his name is Ricardo. I will put his information in the description. I'm sure that this has been very helpful to ease your nerves. If I can do it, so can you, as long as you feel confident and speak at least a bit of Spanish. And let me know how it goes, if you decide to go ahead and do it on your own, or let me know any questions that you might have. I'll see you guys later.